Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully people, as you're getting connected to audio, can hear me okay. And if for folks that are on video, if I could just get a thumbs up that you can see my presentation slide shared. Perfect, thank you so much. All right, so thanks to everyone for joining us today. And, welcome to the 2025 application guidance webinar for New York's Great Lakes Basin Small Grants Program. And I'm actually, okay, just making sure that we are recording. So my name is Megan Cochran. I am the Great Lakes Outreach Coordinator with New York Sea Grant, and I'm based here at our Buffalo office. And I coordinate this small grants program on behalf of New York Sea Grant and the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. And it's really this partnership between our organizations that make this small grants program possible. So I'm really excited to be here today and walk you through this year's funding opportunity. I am joined today by my colleague Mary Osterman, New York Sea Grant's Great Lakes Coastal Community Development Specialist, and she'll be assisting with monitoring the chat and the waiting room as people continue to trickle in. So thank you, Mary. Also with us is Shannon Doherty, DEC's Great Lakes Program Director, who will highlight some updates to the Great Lakes Action Agenda for us later on. And I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to Carrie Thomas from the Northern Forest Canoe Trail and Ian Smith from the Finger Lakes Institute, if they're on at this point. They'll be sharing some highlights of their 2023 small grant funded projects to give you a sense of what some successful proposals have looked like and hopefully spark some ideas for your own applications. And then just one more quick housekeeping note before we dive in. Just again, I'll mention that today's webinar is being recorded, so you should have seen a pop-up box asking for consent upon joining. This recording will be made available on the Small Grants Program webpage, which is the nysgrant.org/GL small grants. And this is the site that you went on to register for today's webinar. So for anyone that can't attend today, or if you want to go back and revisit this information later, that recording will be posted on the site hopefully sometime next week. Okay, so here is what we'll cover today. I'm going to start with an overview of the Small Grants Program, followed by Shannon providing an update on the latest changes to the Great Lakes Action Agenda. Then I'll walk through some of the key details of this year's request for proposals, including how to apply. And then we'll hear from Carrie and Ian with their project updates or highlights, and wrap up today's webinar with hopefully plenty of time for Q&A. That said, if you do have questions at any point throughout the presentation portion of today's webinar, please feel free to drop those into the chat box so that we don't lose them. As I said, Mary will be monitoring that and make sure that we address those once we get to the Q&A session. So as I mentioned briefly in my introduction, the New York's Great Lakes Basin Small Grants Program is administered by New York Sea Grant in partnership with DEC's Great Lakes Program. And because we at New York Sea Grant are a university-based program hosted at Cornell, all of the awarded grants are subcontracted through Cornell University's subawards office. And funding for the Small Grants Program comes from the New York State Environmental Protection Fund. So this program started back in 2015, so it's been going for about a decade. And since we've awarded over $1.8 million in funding to 40 different grant recipients, which has included 61 unique projects throughout New York's Great Lakes Basin. And then this slide just kind of shows you the distribution of those 61 projects throughout the watershed that have occurred over the last 10 years. And this is just a screenshot grab from the Small Grants Project dashboard that's available on the Small Grants Program webpage. So if you do want to learn more about any of the 61 projects, you can go visit the dashboard and filter through and click on the points and interact with the map. Okay, so the Great Lakes Basin Small Grants Program really plays a critical role in helping communities take action. And there's essentially three main ways that this program helps to support Great Lakes related projects. So the first is that the Small Grants Program supports the implementation of New York's Great Lakes Action Agenda. And the Action Agenda provides, a strategic framework for addressing environmental challenges throughout the Great Lakes region. This program was really created as one of the primary funding mechanisms to move the Great Lakes Action Agenda priorities forward. The Small Grants Program also supports ecosystem-based management, which is about taking a more holistic approach to watershed management and considering ecological, social, and economic benefits. And this is something that Shannon will cover in a bit more detail in a few minutes. And then finally, for the last few rounds of small grants, the program has really been focused on helping communities move from planning into action, recognizing that local communities really put significant amount of time and effort into planning. We often see that implementation is where they face the biggest challenges due to either capacity constraints or having limited resources. So Small Grants Program, therefore, is seeking to fill this gap by prioritizing projects that address clearly identified local needs and helping communities move from that planning phase into tangible results. So just to kind of wrap up my overview, by funding projects that align with New York's Great Lakes Action Agenda, apply ecosystem-based management, and address local priorities, this program is really striving to restore Great Lakes communities and ecosystems, boost local economies, promote community resilience and sustainable land use, and also support natural and nature-based solutions throughout the Great Lakes watershed. So with that, I am going to now pass it over to Shannon, who's going to highlight some of the key updates to the 2023 Great Lakes Action Agenda and why these changes matter for you as potential applicants. So Shannon, just let me know when you want me to advance your slides and take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Megan. And it's so encouraging to see so many participants on the line today, a lot of new names as well. I'm glad you're learning about the program. And I can't believe we're in the 9th round of offering this program. It's hard to believe. So just wanted to take a few minutes and introduce ourselves. I am part of DEC's Great Lakes program. We are a watershed-focused interdisciplinary program, essentially working to restore and protect ecosystems within the Great Lakes watershed, as well as our downstream waters, through a variety of programs. And some of the activities that we support or are involved in are listed here. Supporting coordinated science, applied research. We do this through small grants programs or directly through our project work. Working with partners like New York Sea Grant, for instance, and the partnership that Megan just mentioned to provide technical assistance, training, and grants to our many stakeholders, local communities, and organizations working throughout the basin. We support community engagement and stewardship in almost everything we do. And last but not least, our work is really focused on advancing ecosystem-based management. So both planning on a watershed scale and project ecosystem-based ecosystem restoration work. Next slide. And so I wanted to just take a couple minutes and try to demystify a little bit this concept of ecosystem-based management, if you're not familiar. this is really our guiding principle, both as a program and as a significant component and driver for this small grants program. And essentially, it's nothing we need to overcomplicate. It's really thinking about the project that you're envisioning from all sides and ensuring that it is set up in a way to balance ecosystem health considerations, community and social well-being, and economic viability where that's applicable. Um, Here are some of the principles of ecosystem-based management. You'll also find these in the evaluation section of the RFP as well. So consider how your project is place-based. Is it appropriately scaled to address the issue for which it is focused? Does it consider the kind of interaction between natural ecosystems and human-made systems and how those interact? How do humans use a specific site, for instance? How have they used it? And is your project, if it's a restoration activity, for instance, proposing a design that is going to continue to support those uses in a more sustainable way? Very science-based and science-driven, including social science, ensuring we're drawing from the best available scientific information in developing projects. Again, balancing those ecological, social, and economic concerns. Adaptive management, learning by doing. So what has worked, what hasn't worked, and how is your project helping to advance the practice? Recognizing sustainability is also a key component of any good project. A focus on ecological services, functions, and processes, as opposed to a discrete ecosystem component or a single species. We're trying to look at all the parts and pieces of healthy ecosystems and really consider how those are represented within project concepts and proposals. And then last but not least, underscoring all of this is the robust involvement of many diverse stakeholders, local partners, thinking about who your project team is and whether you have all the right people at the table. Next slide. And so this is our action agenda 2023. This is our second iteration of the action agenda since it was first published back in 2015. And we have since updated it with new information based on, new policy, new priorities at the state level, and a lot of feedback that we received from our entire local stakeholder base throughout the watershed. And so we currently have 6 goals, and I'll let you read them off yourself here if you're not familiar, but pretty standard in terms of focusing on, the significant point and non-point source drivers of water quality pollution, invasive species, fish and wildlife habitats. A newer one is goal number 5, where it's really looking at the interaction of building healthy ecosystems that are resilient ecosystems and essentially work to protect our communities. And then really the last goal focused on kind of the local component of environmental health and considering how land use planning, whether it's to facilitate greater access to resources or to additionally protect them is a critical component of all of this. And I'll just add, there's a few different, new priorities woven in. It's pretty consistent with the first version. If you were familiar with it, it is pretty broad. Chances are your project can find some really good alignment in multiple goal areas within this action agenda. We have reorganized it. So in addition to refocusing it to the 6 goals, we also have organized it by implementation strategy that includes identified project metrics and benefits of projects. So an important thing to note that as you are considering an application, definitely take a read through, identify the goal that your project most closely aligns with. If there's a discrete action that pertains to it, even better. And then thirdly, make sure you're aware of those project metrics that are identified and, certainly call those out in your application because that will give us the best sense of what the overall impact of the project may be. Next slide. New to the updated action agenda are these expanded cross-cutting priorities. So these are not goals, but they are so important that they are priorities we are intending to implement with many partners, of course, across each of the 6 goal areas. So, promoting diversity, equity, inclusiveness in our approach, whether we're doing stakeholder management or some other activity. Great Lakes education, focus on students and building that next generation of stewards, integrating traditional ecological knowledge and working in partnership with our indigenous nations where appropriate. Recognizing local capacity, engagement, and partnerships are so crucial, and really working with local communities to provide training resources to do the work that they would like to do at a local level. Innovating and elevating Great Lakes restoration. This is really about kind of considering what new innovative approaches you may take and using opportunities like this small grants program to pilot an initiative or to develop a proof of concept that could be further expanded down the road. Science is a core concept throughout, and ensuring decisions are based on good science. And then lastly, any efforts to help us support climate change adaptation are very much prioritized. Next slide. And this is my last slide. I just wanted to do a quick plug. One of the ways in which we work to operationalize the Great Lakes Action Agenda throughout the entire watershed are through these Action Agenda sub-basin work groups. So we've essentially taken the entire watershed, broken it into 4 sub-basins, and we convene regular work group meetings and other types of outreach opportunities within each of these 4 areas, at least several times throughout the year, but we have meetings twice per year. And so the purpose of these work groups is really to bring folks together at a regional scale, to bring the action agenda, the state level action plan down to scale, so to speak, where we can work together to identify and advance projects and research needs, coordinate, connect, collaborate with partners within the region, and then ultimately connect you all to funding, technical resources, information, and other support that you need to do the work you want to do. So with that, I'll hand it back to Megan, and thank you all for your interest in the program.
Thank you so much, Shannon. That was really helpful. And thanks for going through the ecosystem-based management principles. That is very important when it comes to evaluating the proposals that we receive. So now we're going to get into more of the specifics of this year's request for proposals and how you can apply. Please note that unlike in years past, we are seeking proposals for projects that are requesting funds up to $40,000 in total costs. Previously, this number has been a little bit different. This year, we have a total of $200,000 available in funding. So we anticipate being able to award up to 5 projects at $40,000. And I also want to just note that if you'd like to propose a project with a budget lower than $40,000, that's absolutely acceptable. Just know that you cannot exceed the $40,000. Okay, so taking a look at the application timeline, I'll just note that the request for proposals was officially announced on March 14th, which was about a week and a half ago. All proposal applications are due on Friday, May 2nd at 4:30 p.m. So you have a little over a month and a half to get those proposals together and submitted. Proposals cannot be accepted through the portal even just a minute past 4:30. So do make sure that you don't wait till crunch time because the portal is set to cut off right at that 4:30 p.m. mark. And then we'll do proposal reviews throughout the month of May and expect to notify everyone that has submitted whether or not they have been selected to receive funding in early June. We expect projects to have a start date of July 1, 2025. Project terms can last up to 18 months, bringing us to a project end date of December 31st of 2026. Again, projects can be shorter than this 18-month project period. However, if you do expect your project to be shorter than 18 months, I encourage you to still utilize that full 18-month project term in your proposal, just because there can always be some unexpected delays, and it's easier to wrap up your project a little bit early than it is to ask for an extension. That said, if in the event that your project is unable to be completed in the allotted 18-month time period, for reasons outside of your control, Cornell may be able to offer a no-cost 6-month time extension, but this is to be granted on a case-by-case basis depending on the situation. So eligible applicants for the small grants program include nonprofit organizations, county and local governments, public agencies such as regional planning entities, environmental commissions, and soil and water conservation districts. And then finally, educational institutions are also eligible, which may include public and private K through 12 schools, colleges, and universities. So this year's focus for project priorities, eligible projects for this 2025 round, as always, must be either located in and or directly related to New York's Great Lakes Basin. They must advance one or more of New York's Great Lakes Action Agenda goals and associated metrics. And I've bolded that and starred it because it is new. As Shannon mentioned, the 2023 version of the Action Agenda now includes metrics. So we expect that in your project proposals, you will also note which metrics your project will be addressing and therefore reporting under throughout your project. Of course, projects that are successful must demonstrate ecosystem-based management and then implement actions specifically identified in a local community plan. So I want to talk a little bit more about what we mean when we say a local community-based plan. So to be an eligible plan, it must be something that is formally adopted or recognized by either a local government or a regional planning entity. It must be place-based and apply to a geographic area within New York's Great Lakes Basin. It has to be publicly accessible. And then it also must clearly identify specific actions related to either natural resources, water quality, or sustainable land use. So again, please note that in your proposal, you must clearly identify the specific plan and the page, the page number of the plan that includes the activities that your project proposes to implement. So that way we can cross-check and make sure that those align well. And I did list some examples of some of the types of plans that are eligible. This list is not all-inclusive, so if you do have a question about a plan that you're considering aligning your project with, you're welcome to reach out and ask me for some clarification. So now that I've covered who's eligible and what kinds of projects are eligible, I wanted to take a moment to clarify what kind of project activities are not eligible for funding. And this is just important to cover because we want to make sure that people don't spend time working on an application that would not qualify. So one of the first things is research. This program is designed to fund actions and not studies. Research is obviously valuable, but proposals should focus on implementing a solution rather than investigating a problem. So for example, conducting water quality monitoring alone would not be eligible for funding, but using existing water quality data to guide a restoration project could be. The next is property acquisition. Grant funds can't be used to purchase land, easements, or any form of property. However, projects that either restore or enhance existing public lands may be eligible. Infrastructure and civil works, large-scale construction projects are not eligible. However, natural and nature-based solutions, such as like a wetland restoration for flood control, are encouraged. And then the last piece that's ineligible is, normal operations and maintenance, essentially. So funding can't be used for the upkeep or staffing of existing programs or facilities. However, if you're expanding on a previously funded project in a way that significantly builds upon or enhances its impact, and the activities are distinct, that may be considered. So essentially the key takeaway here is that this program is designed to support on-the-ground implementation projects that align with these local planning efforts. Again, if you're unsure whether your project qualifies, I encourage you to reach out to me before submitting, and I'd be happy to help talk through it. Okay, so as you put together your proposal, there's a few things to keep in mind to ensure that your submission is complete and meets all of the requirements outlined in the request for proposals document. So a couple of the things I wanted to mention, pay close attention to the word and page limits to avoid unnecessary edits at the last minute. By sticking to these guidelines, it really helps us to ensure a fair review process for all applicants. Rather than submitting multiple files, all proposal elements need to be compiled into a single PDF. And this will help to streamline our review process and ensure that no pieces of your proposal get lost. We've also, this year is new for those of you that have applied in the past, we've introduced a file naming convention for your proposal. Again, just to help us keep track of submissions and ensure that your proposal is easily identifiable. So this includes the last name of the project lead, underscore an abbreviation of your organization, and then underscore 2025 proposal, just to keep things organized. So before you do submit, just double check or triple check that you've included everything that's outlined in the RFP. Missing components will make your project or your application ineligible. So it is really worth taking the time to review and make sure that you have everything. And again, the RFP is the best resource for checking these details about proposal formatting, required components, and submission instructions. And again, if you have lingering questions after reviewing those pages 3 through 5 in the RFP, don't hesitate to reach out and ask me for clarification. Okay. So speaking a little bit more about required proposal components, there are a few required forms that you'll need to include in your submission. And these exist on the proposal submission site, and I'll show you how to access those momentarily. But these forms include a template for your proposal cover sheet. This is pretty standard to how we've done it in the past, although I will say that it now includes a few character limits on the length of project titles, just so that it's a little bit easier to share those moving forward. There's a 94 budget form that will detail your budget. And just note that this is still separate from the budget justification and your cost reasonableness statement. So those are three separate components of the proposal and all are needed. And then finally, there's the subcontractor commitment form. This form is required by all applicants. So again, as the applicant are the subcontractor to Cornell University. So since these grants are sub-awards under a larger prime award that New York Sea Grant receives from DEC, you are the subcontractor. So even if you're not contracting out work as part of your project, you are considered the subcontractor and therefore need to have this form. So again, these are all available for download, and I'll show you where to find those in just a moment. So now we're going to just kind of go step by step, just so you can see how to get to the proposal submission portal. So step one is to visit the Small Grants Program homepage, which is the nysgrant.org/GL Small Grants. Once you arrive there, you'll see some tabs along the top, or you can click Learn More on this bar that pops up in regards to the 2025 application period. So you can click the Apply for Funding tab, which will bring you to all of the information related to this year's call for proposals. If you scroll down a little bit, there's going to be a button that says Application Submission Portal. Once you click that, it's going to take you over to New York Sea Grant's website, which is where the submission portal has to live. And so once you're here, it kind of just summarizes the same information about the request for proposals, but I want to point out that along the left-hand side of the website, there's a box called Related Links. This is where you will find download links for the RFP itself, the cover sheet, the 94 budget form, the subcontractor commitment form, all those required forms that you need to complete for your proposal. One other thing that I'll note here as well is that there's also a document for proposals scoring criteria this year that gives you specific information about how your proposal will be scored and what the scale is. So that's available there as well. When you're on this page and when you're ready to actually apply, if you scroll down to the bottom, there's an Apply Now button in the center of the page. And then you'll be brought to what is officially the submission portal that's yellow. And this is where you'll input, your personal information, your organization's information, and then upload your single PDF file with all of your proposal components in there using the naming convention. So, and again, just a reminder, these are due by 4:30 p.m. on Friday, May 2nd. Okay, so again, once you've submitted your proposal, all of the proposals will be evaluated by a panel of representatives from New York Sea Grant, DEC, and the New York State Department of State. Reviewers will assess these proposals based solely on how well they align with the program's goals and priorities using the criteria that I've listed here on this slide. I'm not going to go through each one of these in detail, but again, as I mentioned before, I have this year provided a breakdown of the scoring categories for each criterion that's available on that New York Sea Grant submission portal where you can download that and the required forms. So I highly recommend downloading that scoring breakdown document and referring to it as you put together your proposal. Proposals that are well structured and clearly communicate their purpose and how they address criteria will really stand out. So, Okay, I just have one more slide that I'll mention, and then we'll move into project highlights. So just a couple last things that I wanted to note or reiterate. This program has no matching fund requirements. In the past, some projects have had matching funds, but it's absolutely not a requirement. If your proposal takes place on public or private lands, your proposal must include letters of support from the respective municipality or landowner. And then lastly, just one more reminder that, these small grants are subcontracted through Cornell University. And so again, making sure that you have all those required forms. If you are selected, it will help Cornell begin that subcontracting process with your organization very smoothly. Okay, and then I'll put this slide back up when we're doing Q&A, but this just has, again, the deadline, the website, and then my contact information for anyone who wants to reach out and ask questions or talk, project specifics with me to get some clarification. But in the interest of time, we are going to move into some quick project highlights. And again, we're going to hear from Carrie Thomas and Ian Smith. And then I actually was supposed to have Joanna Panazowitz here today from the Lake Erie Watershed Protection Alliance, but she was unable to make it during this time. So she shared a few slides with me that I will share on her behalf. But we're going to start, we're going to move east to west throughout the state. And we're going to start with Carrie Thomas. And so Carrie, I'll put your slides up and you can take it away as soon as you're ready.
Great. Thanks, Megan. It's fun to get a chance to be here. I am Carrie Thomas with the Northern Forest Canoe Trail. The Northern Forest Canoe Trail is a long distance paddling trail that starts in the Adirondacks and ends in the northernmost tip of Maine. So we manage access to 740 miles worth of paddling opportunities. One of the things that is a challenge everywhere is water quality and invasive species and the need to be supportive of the communities and the landscapes that we travel through. So this was a really exciting opportunity. We, in the Headwaters campaign, it was a collaboration with the Adirondack Council designed to support 3 lake associations in the Racket River headwaters. That's the Blue Mountain Lake Association, Racket Lake Preservation Foundation, and the Long Lake Association. We call the project the Headwaters Campaign. You can go to the next slide. I think we might have been the reason for the character limit on the title, because I'm going to say I did not come up with this title, but it was enhancing digital presence and outreach efficacy of shoreline associations in a headwaters sub-watershed of the St. Lawrence Seaway, which really is amazing. Go ahead to the next slide. So that's just a really long way of saying that we were building capacity for local action in the Racket River headwaters. These lake associations we were working with were facing challenges in reaching new audiences and attracting new members, which meant that as they looked forward, they were facing really limited ongoing workforce challenges to implement their agendas. A lot of the issues revolved around the fact that they're all volunteer organizations and their membership attracted people who wanted to do the work around water quality and quality of life rather than outreach and marketing and promotion. So our primary goals in working with these groups was about improving their messaging and with that messaging, hopefully increasing and diversifying their membership. Go ahead. Backing up a minute, lake associations have such a critical role to play in community engagement and on the ground work. So many different types of organization work on policy, they work on developing science, or maybe managing waterways or landscapes, and enhancing on the groundwork with communities. But lake associations really operate at the nexus of all 3 of these things. So by building capacity here, we felt like we were able to cultivate this leadership role in connecting the science and the policy and the community outcomes. The work that we did together under this program was grounded in baseline policies like the Town of Long Lake Comprehensive Plan, which actually covers both Long Lake and Racket Lake. That's an enormous amount of watershed covered in one comprehensive plan. It featured mitigation efforts based in science around nutrient loading and invasive species, and then also in engaging the varied groups to build awareness of the ways that they can support the efforts to protect the places where they live and play. Each of these lake associations was really not only concerned with invasives and nutrient loading, but they were really concerned about the health of their communities, and they recognized that the lakes that were the centerpiece of their communities, if those lakes stopped being healthy, then their communities stopped being healthy. So it made a lot of sense to work with them. Go ahead to the next slide. So we were able to increase the presence of the individual lake associations with shared content and shared platforms that fed each group. We developed a website, which was a page couched in the Northern Forest Canoe Trail website, which created shared content that would help build a cache for the lake association so that they could push more information out through social media. Many of them had social media accounts, but didn't really know exactly how to use them effectively. So the Headwaters campaign goal was to kind of brand some social media content that would be pushed out to the lake associations so that they could then share that further. We were able to work with a group of students to create unique videos about each community and their values and the value of the lake association, the value of the lake to the community, so that we were able to generate a little bit of individual content for each of the communities, and then we were able to create unique signage. And this, I kind of put the signage images on each of these slides that they're going to be posted in each community. We've built them and created them, but we haven't posted them yet. Okay, go ahead. So the project enhanced connections locally and regionally. Some examples of that are Blue Mountain Lake, the town of Indian Lake and Blue Mountain Lake, village of Blue Mountain Lake and Indian Lake are all together, and the town actually supported the Lake Association's work in its town budget for the first time ever as a result of the work that we did together with these lake associations. Northern Forest Canoe Trail and the council supported each of them in grant writing projects and communication strategies and liaison, and in order to create more effective connections with the DEC land managers. We created those videos to help with the outreach efforts. I think the most important thing that we did together was actually the creation of a network of lake associations. These three groups are very close neighboring communities, and they've been doing this work kind of all by themselves in their little lakes. Even Long Lake and Racket Lake, who are literally part of the same town, were not relying on each other as resources to be better able to do the work that they were setting themselves out to do. And they're all essentially doing the same work. One of the most powerful things that came about as a result of this project was simply connecting with each other. And I remember one woman saying, just knowing that I'm not alone and I can get on the phone and reach out to these people and share my struggle and learn about how they would handle it was incredibly powerful. So it seems like metrics are really important, but sometimes the metrics are simply connectivity to other people who are in a similar position as you are and feeling like you have support in a wider world. Go ahead. In the end, we managed to pull together a needs assessment that we think of as it was sort of identifying the ongoing needs of these lake associations so that they could help each other and that we could continue to help support their capacity building going forward. The needs assessment really fell into these 4 categories. And I think that as we go forward working in collaboration together, it will all be around, helping enhance their ability to communicate with each other, to communicate with the public, and to communicate with the policy-making public as well as their local community public. The partnerships that are available, whether that's between a lake association and somebody like the NFCT or the council, or the regional lake association or the DEC or their community government, helping develop partnerships has been identified as a critical element that is needed going forward. Funding, that might just be helping them develop their ability to write grants, but also in policy work, trying to pull together, advocate for additional funding that will support the work that they're doing. And then the other part that was interesting, a lot of us do this work professionally. All of these lake associations, as I said before, are doing this on a volunteer basis. And as they got into this work because they wanted to, pull milfoil out of the lake, a lot of them aren't in it because they want to be managing essentially what is functioning as a nonprofit, even though it isn't really set up as a nonprofit. So it's the management of the work, the management of the volunteer base, the management of grant funds. There's definitely a real need to build capacity there. So those were sort of the things that we wound up with in the end that we want to keep supporting going forward. Go ahead. Sorry, that slide got really formatted funny.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. I don't think that's your fault. It's probably mine. And it's really just sort of what we're doing going forward is really helping these organizations stay connected, remain that neighborly contact that allows them to not feel like they're doing it alone, help build that capacity for management, help build the capacity for grant funding, help build the capacity to advocate for themselves on a policy level, and also certainly stay connected with the communities that they were able to connect with through the increased communications capacity. And we would really like to share the experience that we all had together with the broader region, and consider that I loved the map that Shannon showed with you're breaking down your region into these smaller regions. Those regions are still enormous. We are just this tiny group of people, and it felt like there was real value in just talking to your neighbors, essentially. And so we wanted to think about how we could help other neighborhoods of watersheds get together in talking much smaller context, but I think very meaningful, either daily, weekly, monthly contact with each other was just incredibly valuable for these folks. And we wanted to see about figuring out how to facilitate that type of experience for other micro neighborhoods as well. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carrie, for sharing. The relationship building piece that really came out of your project is just a really great story to share. All right, next up we have Ian Smith from the Finger Lakes Institute, who is going to talk about the Odessa Green Infrastructure Initiative for a couple of minutes. I do realize that we're getting close to 1 o'clock, so I just wanted to say that if you do have questions, please pop those in the chat, because if we get to the point where we aren't able to address all of the questions before 1, if people need to take off, I can always follow up with folks via email afterwards. I'm also considering setting up some office hours over the next month and a half before the proposal deadline, so that people can pop in and chat with me about some ideas. So I'll just let you know that there will be more opportunities for Q&A, and I apologize that we've run a little bit late, but I just wanted to say that before we move forward. But Ian, looking forward to hearing about your project. So I will pass it over to you and put up your first slide. And thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. Thanks, Megan. So yeah, my name's Ian Smith. I'm with the Finger Lakes Institute, which is a component within Hobart and William Smith Colleges in Geneva, New York. But functionally, I am the director of the Seneca Watershed Intermunicipal Organization. I'm just based here at the colleges. So I work with the 45 municipalities within our 711 square mile watershed. And in 2022, we completed our watershed nine element plan. And after that time, we naturally started looking for opportunities to implement all the various actions described in that plan and document. And in conversation with the mayor of the village of Odessa, he brought to my attention the rather old and poorly functional, if you can even describe it as functional, stormwater system within their village. So I guess just to back up a little bit, the village of Odessa is about roughly 500 citizens, located up the hill from Watkins Glen and Schuyler County, kind of in between Watkins and Ithaca, New York, feeds into the main inlet to Seneca Lake. So we were looking for specifically opportunities for upland retention. So when he brought this to my attention, showed me the challenges he was having, looking for assistance with addressing the stormwater management system, that naturally brought up an opportunity. Some of you who may work in this area, there's not a lot of financial assistance through the existing programs to support traditional gray infrastructure, but there is a lot to do green infrastructure where you sort of incorporate some of those ecological function and concepts into your design. So that's what we initially talked about doing. And then talking further with him, he brought up some other things that were going on in the village. They had recently been granted a new location for their village offices or were in the process of relocating their Department of Public Works facilities. So their existing public work facilities, which is shown on the central image here, is located just a block off of Main Street, but it's dirt, drained into another stormwater inlet, constantly feeding sediment and water. So they were interested in completely reconceptualizing the use of that space since they were going to vacate it. And then finally, the village had acquired about 2.5 miles, maybe 3, of an old Lehigh Valley Rail corridor that runs from the north side of the village along the ridge opposite Watkins Glen on the east side of Seneca Lake towards the village of Burdett. That property had been abandoned by the railroad decades ago, and it bisects numerous small drainages, none of which, except for one, is considered a stream. And shale had filled in the culverts, and they had been backed up, and water was overtopping and eroding the old rail corridor, and in some cases blowing out the 100-year culverts that were made out of stone. So that kind of gives you an idea of the energy that was going through the area. So that opened up another avenue to incorporate some both recreational, social development, and potentially some ecological benefits through using the old rail structure as a berm of sorts and integrating it with some retention area. So this is, some of you might be familiar with DEC's engineering planning grant. That's the typical way we would approach implementation design projects, doing analysis work. That didn't really fit this very well for a couple different reasons. One, it's a reimbursement-based program, and for a village of 500 people, that's a lot of money to try to come up with when your entire available, discretionary income on an annual basis is measured in a couple $1,000. $30,000-$40,000 is a lot. And then the second part is, because of all these sort of weird use cases and a lot of social and economic goals here too, we wanted to do a lot of outreach on top of that analysis. So the Sea Grant program, because it was available to educational institutions, that allowed Hobart and William Smith colleges to kind of take on the financial responsibility and expand the sort of scope beyond just traditional analysis, to do some outreach and engagement to sort of get public input on how we can try to meet all these various goals together. Next slide, Megan, or whoever's doing the slides. So yeah, the principal component that we developed was the engineered analysis. That was our main expense. We worked with a small engineer out of Syracuse to gather all the information and analysis that we needed to sort of test whether or not our conceptual plan for integrating various screen infrastructure systems, bioretention areas, infiltration trenches, stormwater management basins, whether they were feasible under the space constraint and infiltration constraints of the local area. And indeed, they in fact were. I can show the little board we made when we went selling around the finished product. In total, our systems predict to do just 9.3 million gallons annual runoff reduction a year, and also 11 pounds of phosphorus and 9 tons of sediment on an annual basis, were it to be implemented, of course. And on the second side of it, the outreach side, we didn't get the engagement levels that we were hoping to in terms of numbers, but the information that we did get back from people was really, really informative, and sort of laid the next steps for actual proceeding to implementation. We got a lot of interest in volunteering to help implement it. For people that were adjacent to some of these systems, they were interested in, oh, can we manage it in our landscape and plant stuff in there, as part of our garden. So that was a really great sort of local connectivity to get stakeholder build-in. We also got a partnership with a local construction company that was very interested in assisting with the trail corridor in particular. So we kind of took all those elements together, and we've taken the sort of feasibility and outreach elements to combined, and we're now actively developing proposal to access some of these new Bond Act funding programs that are currently open. So we're looking to proceed to implementation in the next handful of months, which we needed the analysis, of course, done first before we could qualify for a lot of that. So this was absolutely critical in that regard. And then those programs require a local match, of course, and our engineer amazingly came in 2 months ahead of schedule. So working with Megan, we were able to reallocate some of the leftover time and money, sort of develop some additional outreach elements to go after, so getting those local match commitments secured ahead of these funding opportunities. So we're ready to go now, and just putting all of our ducks in a row to now proceed to implementation. So that's where we currently stand. Phase 2.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ian, for sharing. Let me go next. So we're just about at 1 o'clock right now, and I'm not sure what people's commitments are time-wise if you have to run at 1 o'clock. I was hoping to get to some questions. And I think what I'll do for those of you that can and would like to stay on, we can continue, and I'm happy to stick around and answer some questions. But for those of you that do have to run, my plan is to schedule a number of different office hour availability that I will post on the Small Grants website, and I'll put the information into my follow-up email to everyone after this webinar. So that way, if you did have burning questions and things that you want to talk through with me, I'm happy to address those during those office hours, as well as I'm always available via phone and email. So please reach out anytime. And I do apologize. It was poor planning on my part that we ran out of some time for questions. But for those of you that can stick around, I'm just going to quickly go through the quick highlight, project highlight for Joanna's project that she shared with me. And then again, we can get to questions for those of you that do have time. So Joanna Panazowicz, who is the LUPA coordinator, worked on the Lake Erie Watershed Regulation Review Project. And LUPA, the Lake Erie Watershed Protection Alliance, is a partnership between Erie County, Chautauqua County, and Cattaraugus County, which was formed in 2009 after a flooding event that occurred along Cattaraugus Creek. And this, the LUPA group their mission is to assist local municipalities in achieving smart growth, sustainability, and resilience through watershed management. And so for their small grant project, Erie County actually applied on LUPA's behalf for the small grants program and received the funding, again, on LUPA's behalf. So this project addressed the regional Niagara River and Lake Erie watershed management plan. Specifically, a recommendation that came out of Chapter 6 of this plan, which was to train local staff and board members on reviewing developments from a water quality and habitat protection lens. And then I also wanted to mention that Joanna's project specifically addressed goals 2, 7, and 8 of the 2015 version of the Great Lakes Action Agenda because her project was primarily focused on water quality, enhancing community resiliency, and promoting smart growth specifically. So real quick to summarize, her project, the main goal was to provide municipalities within the watershed with resources and technical information so that they would be better equipped to make changes to their plans and regulations. And so the way that they set out to achieve this, they reviewed zoning codes, comprehensive plans, and other regulations for 27 different municipalities within the Niagara River Lake Erie watershed. And so they analyzed these existing regulations, identified gaps, and made recommendations for adjustments that could be made to help protect water quality, improve ecosystem sustainability, and increase resilience to flooding. And so one of the main products that came out of this project was the water quality checklist. And so this form is meant for planners, planning boards, and zoning boards to use to kind of review what some of the water quality, potential water quality impacts when reviewing major site plans. And so this checklist is, it's really meant as like a conversation starter, but it can be a really good tool for these planners and zoning boards. And it is available on LUPA's website. The other things that came out of this project were these a number of different resource sheets. Again, this is at the top is the website where these resources are available, including the checklist that I showed, erie.gov/LUPA training. And so these resource sheets are really great because they first give like a brief description of some water quality related issue. And then they compiled a handful of different case studies that have either been done locally throughout New York State or even potentially nationwide to provide some examples of what other communities are doing in terms of, whether it's implementing new regulations or some other actions that municipalities can take to help to address these water quality issues. And real quick, I'll just flash a number of the different resource sheets that are available at that LUPA training webpage, if anyone's interested in learning more. Okay, so thanks for those of you that were able to stick around for just a few extra minutes. I'll post my contact information here again, as well as the New York City Grant website and that deadline. And with that, for those of you that are here, I'm happy to spend a few minutes answering as many questions as people have. Mary, is there anything in the chat that we should address that, people are still around for?
So Maris has a question about the audit, but I think that's probably something you guys might want to talk about. And then there was questions about whether or not projects had to be on a water body, and I put in the response just in the interest of time, it does not have to be on a water body, it just has to be in the Great Lakes Basin.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to address Great Lakes Action Agenda priority one of the priorities at least, and EBM.
Correct, yes. If the stronger connection that projects can make to how they're impacting or benefiting the Great Lakes Basin as a whole or a community within the basin, those will be, you're more likely to be successful.
Yep.
Yeah, the question about the financial audit, Maris, I can follow up about that piece because that's something I may need to check in with Cornell to get a little bit more information on that piece.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, thank you.
That would be
There was
really
a-
helpful to know. Thank you, Megan, about the audit.
Oh, thank you, Don. Thanks.
There was a question about where to find community plans, and so I just listed a couple of other examples. So they just have to be community adopted plans. They could be a local waterfront revitalization program. It could be a comprehensive plan, a watershed plan, a recreation plan. It just has to be something that's been adopted at the community level, which adopted means like it's a quote unquote official plan. So Megan, I don't know if there's anything else that you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say that, there's no specific place and all-encompassing list. But, if you have a plan that your community is using, again, you feel free to reach out to double check with me. Again, just a reminder, it has to be publicly available, and it should have, some amount of community input, these plans. But yeah, like Mary said, she gave a few additional examples, but happy to help clarify if there's a plan that's maybe a little bit more obscure. But yeah.
And I can only say this jokingly because I know Don really wants these slides, Megan. Are we going to make these available?
Oh yes, I actually saw that pop up in the chat. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. In my follow-up email after the webinar, I'm more than happy to share the slides.
Perfect. I think we got everyone's questions in the chat. If I missed any of your questions, please feel free to unmute and just shout it out.
Yeah, and if there's other questions that were not in the chat, also feel free to come off mute and ask those. We can spend a little time chit-chatting.
I just wanted to say thank you, Megan and Mary and Shannon. As Mary knows, I'm relatively new in this role. So breaking this down to lay terms as you have is really helpful. It's easy for new people coming into this kind of work to get lost really rapidly. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Don. Yeah, our program is meant to be for folks that don't regularly apply for grants. Like, it's supposed to be something that's a little bit more approachable, of a way to get some funding. So yeah, thank you. I appreciate that feedback. Any other questions? Okay, I just wanted to give people time to think, but yeah, if there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. And as I said, I'll follow up via email with slides, some important reminders and links, as well as information about some upcoming office hour opportunities to connect with me. Thank you everyone for your time, and thanks for staying a few minutes late.
Thank you, Megan. Thanks, Mary. Thanks, team.